Welcome to Monday Live, Exploring Birth Psychology. Today is Monday, April 19th, 2021. I'm your host, Catherine Lightfoot, the Education Director for APPPAH, the Association for Prenatal and Perinatal Psychology and Health. Monday Live is APPPAH's platform for bringing you the experts and pioneers in the field of pre and perinatal psychology to inform and inspire our expanding awareness of conscious babies. Monday Live is free and open to all who join us live on Zoom every Monday at noon Eastern Time. You can register to receive the emails and links every week on our website, birthpsychology.com. If for some reason you do not get the link to join sometime, I just want you to know that you can also find the Zoom link on our events calendar page. Let me show you where you can find that. Share my screen here. There's our website. Here's the link for events. Right, the first one on that is event calendar. So if you click there, you will see each one of our Monday Live events listed. And so inside, here's our today's speaker. Inside of each event, we are beginning now to add the Zoom link. So if you cannot find the email that has the Zoom link, or for some reason you don't receive it each Monday, you can find the Zoom link to join right here on our website. And we hope that we will see you each and every Monday. So today, as we begin, let's just take a moment and maybe find something in your space that you can gaze at for a moment that brings you comfort or joy or peace. The more often that we find these pause moments in our day, the more easily we're able to ground ourselves and resource ourselves in moments of need. Taking a breath as you gaze at that item or out your window. Feel your body where you are in this present moment. And then bringing your attention gently back to your screen whenever you're ready. If you're seeing gallery view, maybe connecting with someone else that is also here, joining our community and our circle time that we're so grateful to have each and every week. And today we gratefully and joyfully welcome with us Eliza Parker. Eliza's work helping babies and parents to sleep, move, and feel better revolves around her respect for babies as whole people who enter the world aware, desiring to communicate and learn, and with the ability to process and self-heal within relationship. Her conscious baby practice employs unique approaches to non-cry-it-out sleep, to baby-led milestone development, to healing birth trauma, and parental attunement to nonverbal cues and crying. As a certified aware parenting instructor, infant developmental movement educator, body-mind centering practitioner, and trained Feldenkrais practitioner, Eliza's life-changing perspectives and respectful solutions toward common parenting challenges transcend typical parenting advice. You can find more about Eliza at consciousbaby.com and by listening to us right here today. Thank you, Eliza. Welcome.
Hey, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. This realm of birth psychology and infant consciousness is very important to me, and I think there are so many magical things about it. So I'm going to talk about the connections that I find between baby sleep challenges and processing the birth story, and I'll talk about what I mean by that. So I'm going to focus on those links in this talk, not so much on the usual common baby sleep challenges, although some of them will overlap. So we can come back to that as well if needed. Let me start out by giving you a little information about my approach, my lineage. As you heard, body mind centering, that's the work of Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen. That's the infant developmental movement education piece. It's also, there's also some birth processing inherently in there, because the first year motor patterns are the foundation for all human movement. And some of that is they're already processing from being born. So arching, flexion, extension. And then secondly, aware parenting. And that's the work of Dr. Elitha Solter. And this work is about always recognizing the underlying needs behind challenges and behavior. So for babies, it's understanding crying and crying beyond needs. And that's going to be really important for us today. And then for toddlers, understanding tantrums. And then it goes on up through the ages, but always looking at underlying needs. And then this birth story work. And the birth story, processing the birth experience, I pull from both of those, body, mind centering and aware parenting, but also especially Wendy Ann McCarty, which some of y'all may be familiar with. I did some classes with her, a couple of classes, and a lot of really great information coming from that work and from Wendy. So I want to acknowledge her. Okay, so my business or my practice is called Conscious Baby. And I work with ages, well, with expectant parents and then babies on up through around 3-ish. And I work mainly with sleep, or the framework is sleep. So if you go to my website, you'll see sleep. And that's the presentation, and that's how most people find me. But the reality is that I have a bit of a different take on sleep, which also I'll talk about. But I work with 3 main areas within that, which is pent-up feelings and stress, processing the birth story, and baby-led motor development. Or if it's a toddler, then it's more attachment play. So all of those things are in sleep. So for me, it's like the big picture can take us into the smaller, well, it's not that small, it's kind of a big deal if you're having sleep troubles, but the more specific story of sleep challenges, but also it brings us back out to the whole, because I see sleep as a state, and a lot about how we are, how's our state of mind, our state of being. Same for the baby. Are they able to relax? That all has to do with sleep. So I see birth story or birth experience affect baby sleep all the time. There are other factors as well, but I just see this so often. So that's what I'm going to share about. What I mean by birth story, first of all, so magical to work with a family and to witness a baby or a toddler showing us and communicating their birth story. And when I say birth story, I really mean birth and early experiences. So conception, pregnancy, actual birth, immediately after birth, and then anything very early. Really any experiences impact us, but kind of that window. So babies remember. There's different kinds of memory, felt sense, literal memory, but babies remember, and they need to process their experiences just like we do. They have questions, they need to understand, they have feelings to process. And so often they're already trying to show us their story and to communicate about their experiences. And babies will tend to just literally show in their body, and toddlers can be very symbolic in how they play. So they're really trying to communicate with us, and they're already seeking healing. And what I mean by processing their birth story or their birth experience is two things: information and feelings, kind of as overarching. So sometimes they need the information, they need to understand why or what happened. And then very often, if not always, they have some big feelings to process about it. And depending on the child and the family and the situation, but I find it's not always necessarily that a lot of trauma or that a lot of feelings equals there was a lot of trauma or a lot of stress in the birth experience. Sometimes families will tell me, oh, it was great, I had the birth that I wanted, everything, it was beautiful. And then the baby still has a lot to process. So I always say it's relative to the baby and mom and whoever was present in the room, but whatever they're processing, it's not about what's on paper, it's about what's relative to the baby. Quick word about imprints, which also some of you may already be familiar with. Imprints, there are periods during this whole process, conception, pregnancy, birth, after birth, that where we develop habits. We can develop habits for how we interact with people, for expectations that we get set up in about our environment, people. So that's also in this, because when babies are trying to work out their birth experience, these imprints will often show up. And I'm going to give you some specific examples of things that I see, connections I see. So some of that imprints will come up there. Okay. Before I move on to why the connection between sleep and birth story, I'll just check in with Catherine. Shall I keep on going?
We're so enjoying this, and I don't have any questions or anything coming in at this point, so let's move on.
Alrighty. So sleep and the birth experience. I want to talk about the connection there. So sleep challenges, is it really because they don't know how, or is it because something's affecting their ability to relax? Something's keeping them from fully relaxing. Sleep is required for survival. So babies already know how. That doesn't mean all babies are sleeping well. It just means that in their system, they know how. So that specifically is not the issue for me and what I see. So what we want to do is go underneath that. What's causing, we've got a bird visitor. We want to go under to what's causing that, or what's preventing them from sleep, from relaxing deeply. And again, I look at sleep as a state. So you can think about, if something's on your mind, how well do you sleep, or how does it affect you? Does it affect your breathing? Do you stay up thinking about it at night? I'm a thinker, and if I start thinking about, if I wake up in the middle of the night and I start thinking about something, I don't know why, but it's a million times bigger in the middle of the night. So same for babies. And if not more so, because they're so fresh out of their intensive birth experience. And that's where I want to go deeper to underlying needs, what's affecting their state, and working there. And it can go in lots of different directions from there, but when we can get down to that root level about what's affecting them being able to relax, then we can start addressing those things to help them process or be more comfortable in their bodies, and then they sleep naturally. And I'm all about, let's find the ways we can support their foundation so that they can take the next step themselves. And for me, that's what Conscious Baby is about, in a sense, is that babies are whole already, and they're born already with all these feelings, the potential of all these feelings in them. They're able to communicate. We just need to know what to look for. So what could be on a baby's mind that might keep them from relaxing? Whatever they've been through up until now. A lot of, sometimes there's a lot of perspective kind of in traditional literature, although it's changing, but that babies don't remember, they're what can they have to worry about? They're so new. Well, if you come into the world as a very fresh new nervous system and you've just been through an intense experience of being born, and which maybe it was at home, maybe it was in a hospital, maybe there was separation, there's all kinds of things that happened during birth, maybe they were stuck. There's a lot to process there already. And it's not about perfection or creating the right, having everything just right or just perfect. It's really for babies about, let's set it up mindfully as we can, but also whatever happens, they need to process that. So it's not about judgment on anyone's choices. No should or shouldn'ts, just from the baby's perspective, literally what happened and processing that. So there's a gem here. There's always a gem for if there are sleep troubles. The birth story, when birth doesn't go the way moms want it to, that can really be a big impact for moms. And also there can be a gem in all of this. Processing the birth experience will often lead to some healing experiences, some bonding, and sleep challenges will often just take us into a baby's communication process and setting up that foundation. And again, building trust and bonding. So there's lots of gems there. Okay, I'm going to take a drink of water before I talk about links that I see. Okay. So I'm going to talk through some connections that I see between sleep and birth story. And some of them are about toddlers, but the themes apply still to babies regardless of age. But sometimes it's just a little more visible in toddlers, and then you can kind of work backwards and say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And some of these are very common things that I see, and some are more individual. So I'm going to say some examples of what I saw connected to whatever. And just know that it's not going to look like that 100% of the time in all NICU cases or all night wakings. And I have permission to share the stories that I'll share. So first, general feelings, and this is really important. If a baby is having a hard time relaxing, isn't sleeping deeply, so this might be at bedtime, having a hard time settling, or it might be overnight wakings. Sleep, when we're tired, we're all more vulnerable when we're tired. And very true for babies and toddlers. So that's often a time when feelings can bubble up. So not all pre-sleep feelings that bubble up or crying is related to birth story, but I do often find birth story related to sleep, but I always find some feelings related to sleep challenges somewhere in the process. It's not always easily recognizable if parents are used to doing a certain thing that gets baby to sleep, but when we start really looking into it and really taking the notch down and going slower, we can find that. So general feelings is something that will often come up regardless of whatever the birth situation was. Okay, arching and pushing. Arching itself, so arching or extension, can come from different things, but when there's pushing with the feet along with it, I find that it's typically about processing the birth. Um, it's that impulse to be born can be just so strong in their body, because also it's survival. They have to get out of the womb if they're going to keep surviving. So that impulse, I find, can just be so strong and still running in their body. And regardless of vaginal or C-section birth, and sometimes it's like they're still looking for it. Sometimes it's just like it's just there, it's still expressing. And then sometimes it feels more like they're looking for something. It's like their head is looking for the tunnel or looking for something. So there's typically crying with the arching and pushing. Sometimes there's also spiraling. So I'm going to talk some more too about how I work with these, but this is a time that I work with movement, that I bring in movement to actually help them feel that movement instead of them just push and arch and it doesn't go anywhere, push and arch. So to kind of help it integrate. So I had one family who, so I see pushing and arching very often, but one family came to me with sleep challenges, and at 7 months, their baby she would arch and push, but her hands would go up as well, kind of like she was diving backwards. And she had come out so fast that she was caught by fabric and pillows. So it felt like, as we discussed what happened and felt it witnessed the baby, it felt like those things were linked. Okay, being stuck. So being a little stuck, and this is the word I use, the word that parents use when they describe this to me, that they feel like baby was stuck. Sleep can be affected. I find it more specifically in them trying to work it out than this being connected to a specific behavior or a specific sleep challenge. But it's often in there in that general feelings category. So they might be pushing and arching. They might show where they got stuck. They might show their hand was by their head, or they might, every time they push and arch, they stop in the same place. Or they may dislike being strapped into the stroller or the car seat, or being on the changing table. Those things can point to an experience of being stuck, or vice versa, they've experienced being stuck. Those things can bring up that memory. One family that I worked with, their 2-year-old boy, he had some big blocks that were stacked up a couple feet high or something, with holes in them, I guess from how it connected. So there was a hole all the way through to the ground. He was tossing stuff in there before I even came in the door. So I took this symbolic play as my cue and just went with it. And in his birth experience, he had been pretty stuck. So he had other tunnel-like toys also that he would drop little things down and look in there. And they would especially get stuck, or they would get smashed underneath. He also, to introduce you to my my demo doll, this is Corey. He also, this little boy, was really trying so hard. He's wanted the shirt off the doll. He really, really wanted the shirt off the doll, and he was struggling. And the tendency there is to help get the shirt off, or teach how to get the shirt off, or, oh, that's not your doll. No, we don't do that. Leave the shirt on. But if we step back into this bigger perspective with this lens on, we can see the story right there, being stuck. Something was stuck around his head. So that's the detective work of this, is looking at a baby's movement or how they're playing or interacting, and is there a connection there? Okay, now I'm going to talk about some more specific connections. So sleep issues around the crib and being in the NICU or a separation experience. I'm going to kind of talk about all of this. May not necessarily be a crib in the family sleeping arrangements, but when a baby, quote, won't let you put him or her down, which usually means if they're put down, even if they fall asleep, put down and they'll cry or become upset, pick them up, stop crying, put them down. So kind of get caught in this endless, what do you do? Just hold the baby for sleep. Or a crib can be triggering, can trigger some of these memories of NICU or separation. Also, sometimes if a baby, especially around sleep, but can be other times too, is on alert, or it's like they have radar, they become really upset if a parent leaves the room. So it's separation anxiety, but a little more intensive. I often find those connected with something in the birth or early experience. And sleep itself is a separation, is like a separation. It's a change of state, and it can feel like they're going away and coming back, or mom is going away and coming back. And then depending on the sleeping arrangements, might also be a literal separation. So when I see that, I look for, was there a separation experience? And then I'll also say that sometimes babies will show us something that it's, again, relative to how they experienced it. There may not have been an actual separation event between mom and baby. There may not have been a NICU event, but there may have been something going on in the family's lives, maybe something with career or the family, just something happening that the baby experienced not as much connection with mom or dad, and that feels like a separation. So, okay, C-section. So this, again, not necessarily always a specific sleep challenge, but if a baby is still processing a C-section, it will come up in the story when we're working with sleep and birth story. So I often find that there's a sense that they're still waiting for something. Something doesn't feel quite right. Like they're still waiting. And I find that babies who, whether they were vaginally born or C-section, will still arch and push. So that impulse is there, whether they come out through the tunnel or not, I find. So sometimes with the C-section, it's just like they're still looking for something. And if you've ever had the experience of waiting for something, or you're waiting to hear about something, or waiting for something to resolve, at least for me, it's like part of myself is always there, always waiting, like wondering what's going to happen, when's it going to happen. So when that comes into sleep, because sleep, for us to sleep, we need to relax and let go to a certain extent. So if part of us is still waiting for something, it's like that part may not be able to fully settle. I had this is another 2-year-old story. They were having some nap resistance, as she called it. And as mom explained about their C-section and why it happened and what happened, the child really listened. He really sat there and took it in. And then after that, he went over to mom and gave her a hug and they had a really beautiful connection moment. And I often see this, I call it a reconnection moment. I often see this when they've taken in some information. We've gone through something in the story and we've hit upon something that they needed, something they needed to understand, and they take it in, and then they'll go over and reconnect that loop. So sometimes if there's something unresolved, they will, if we get the feelings out also, but also the information, they will make that reconnection. So the same child, he also kept staying in a fort we had made, so a womb type space. He just kept staying in there. So I followed that and asked about pregnancy, discovery, let's get into that. And turns out there had been a miscarriage before him. And that can mean some internal questions about, am I staying? Am I gonna leave? Are they gonna leave? Am I gonna lose them? So we talked through that, and he had some feelings about that we held space for. And then he crawled into his womb fort and he fell asleep. And it was nap time. So, I mean, it was daytime. So another interesting connection there, just about what keeps us from relaxing and what we are still trying to resolve. Okay, let me see here. I want to talk about how I work with this before our time runs out, but let me mention, we can come back to these two if we have some more time, but let me just say one more and then I'll move on. Sometimes with toddlers, and this is one of those you can see with toddlers clearly, but the idea applies to babies. Sometimes if a toddler is making continued demands at bedtime, like I want some water, I want a snack, I want to read another book, I want to say goodnight to all the things, that kind of thing. Sometimes that can happen if they were done to, so to speak. Now, I say that not from a judgmental space, because sometimes if there was an intervention, suction or vacuum, or something happened when they were born and they weren't breathing, it's not judgment about that. It's literally from the baby's perspective. It's not about what, maybe it saved their life or whatever it was, but from the baby's perspective, it can feel sometimes like they came out and stuff was just done to them. So going back to the concept of imprints, in their imprint of interacting with other people as they were born, the first people they interacted with was by being done to, stuff being done to them, versus just the calmness of being present with. And again, not a judgment. But so sometimes that imprint can look like demanding things, doing things, also getting hyper or busy or wound up before sleep. So, and that can happen just in general with needing to process feelings, being busy or hyper wound up. Instead of winding down, they wind up before sleep. So those are some things that we definitely can see visibly in toddlers, but it also, if you work backwards to babies and kind of see, oh yeah, my baby does get pretty distracted or pretty alert and awake before sleep. Sometimes that's connected to some of the interventions that may have happened. And then sometimes it's not the interventions, but it's just big feelings about any situation. Okay. I'm gonna move on to how I work with this, with birth story a little bit more. The feelings is a huge, huge part of this, being able to process their feelings. This is key. So it's critical here to know the quote other reason for crying. And this comes from Aware Parenting, Aletha Salter, in my work. We call it crying in arms. So crying, everyone knows babies cry to communicate basic needs. They're hungry, they want to be held, that kind of thing. But not everyone knows that babies also cry to process their experiences, and it's a natural healing mechanism, excuse me. So if there's something they're still trying to work out from their birth experience, it will often come through in feelings, and it will often come through at some point pre-sleep, or as we're working with birth story, or they might wake up with a cry. So as far as the sleep part and working with sleep, that part is a lot about the feelings and just holding space for them, not distracting the cry, not ignoring, shutting out the cry, but really holding them and holding space and listening to it. And that's something, don't be afraid of those big feelings. That's precisely what they're trying to work out, generally speaking. And they need to release that, let off some steam before they sleep in order to relax. The birth part, if they're still stuck on something that they're still trying to resolve, we will still see some of the sleep challenges, even if they've let off some steam or they've let out a bunch of feelings often. So working with birth experience, I will, one of three things. One, just follow the child. Sometimes they will start in on something. So if I kind of introduce myself, hi, I'm Eliza, we're going to talk about your birth story today, show us what you need to. Sometimes they will take it, even babies, and they'll start doing peekaboo, or they'll dive into mama's tummy. So we just follow that. Sometimes it's having mom or dad, but it's usually mom, start telling the story, and we go slowly and stop at certain points along the way, see what needs to happen. Do I need to show this with my doll or do it with their doll? And then third, sometimes I will suggest some symbolic play, like wrapping a doll up in a blanket. Sometimes the movement piece, helping them integrate the movement, letting them push off so they can feel that movement. Let me go down to, okay, the feelings. Okay, these next few things come from both body mind centering and aware parenting, attachment play, symbolic play, but also definitely a lot from Wendy and McCarty. So to acknowledge her here as well. Noticing the cues and signals and really looking symbolically. Peekaboo, sure, babies love peekaboo, toddlers love hiding, but it's also very much a birth game. So it's a great entryway. Yep, again, going to mom's tummy. Maybe also leaving the room. If we start in on birth story and a toddler leaves the room, then is it too triggering? Is there something that's too triggering and we need to back up and slow down and make this more gentler, more easy? Or was there a separation experience where they're actually showing us the separation? And this happens with babies too. If they're mobile, they will sometimes move away. Props. I'll show you. So I have my baby my baby who's inside, my little baby. And yes, I believe this is a bread warmer, something like that, but it's a very nice little womb. So I didn't mention that I work online, and I worked online before COVID, and I do not find that hinders birth story work at all with babies or toddlers. They take it and run with it. So sometimes I will show mine and start explaining, where's baby? Do you see baby? Baby's inside. And then depending what their story is. And then sometimes I have them find a doll or a stuffed animal and wrap that doll up in a blanket, and then we go through their story. And then sometimes we'll do it with the child. The child will, I'll suggest it, or the child will crawl into mama's lap and we'll wrap the blanket around safely so they can breathe. And depending on what the child is processing, or the baby, sometimes it's easier to see it and process it when it's not happening to you, but you see it, they see it on the doll. And even babies who are not necessarily playing with us like toddlers, they still interact, and they still show these things, and it still goes in when we use the props. So I'm aware of the time. Let me look. Couple other things: forts, building a fort and going in, or a laundry basket as a way to initiate conversation, or have them play peekaboo games, here I am, inside outside games, and not leaving it at just, oh, there you are, peekaboo, peekaboo, but taking that a step deeper into, oh, where's my baby? Where's my baby? Oh, there you are. My baby's here. I'm so glad you're here. Oh, where's my baby? I think my baby's coming soon. I like overlaying birth themes into that play. Okay. I'm going to stop there, and I can go back to any of those topics if there's anything to clarify or to go deeper, or whatever questions you'll have. So Catherine, what do you think?
Wonderful. We do have some questions coming in for you if you're open. Let's see. Corinne Gerber says, I have a 6-month-old that showed me exactly that arching and pushing with feet and crying. Mom keeps a cushioned ring pillow in her crib, while I have been giving craniosacral therapy. A few days ago, the baby girl was unattended and fell face down off the parent's bed, approximately 30 centimeters. I am familiar with the Feldenkrais method. Could you give some suggestions of how I could implement some easy ways of helping her to integrate?
When something happens like that, like the fall, what I find comes up first is usually the feelings. Well, the fall or the birth story. Usually what I find in the forefront is feelings. And this is something that, if you'd like to learn more about that, Aletha Solter has several books. Aware Baby is where I would start. But sometimes it's hard to get down to the deeper layer of processing kind of the information and what happened with birth if the feelings are really up at the forefront. And that's something that a lot of parents have been taught, or feel that they need to stop all crying no matter what. So this is a new perspective often about holding space for the feelings. So the first layer there, I would say, would be the feelings. For the pushing and arching, was that in there in the question, Catherine? The pushing and arching. The way I teach it, there are many, many ways to do this, but the way I teach it is I'd be sitting on the floor or a bed, and having their feet on my tummy and push off my tummy, supporting them as they go. And the idea of your hands there is that you can take them out farther. But any way that you happen to end up, so if you're sitting holding baby in your arms or your lap and baby starts pushing feet into your hands or your leg and they go sideways over your lap and you can take them out. Or if they're a little older and they're sliding on the floor, if it's a slippy, safe surface and they push off you and slide on the floor. And there may be other information or movement around that to process, but that's kind of the basic, to have them push off, but not just push off, but to feel it taking them somewhere and to lay in, oh yeah, that's like when you were born. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Susan asks, I recently spoke via Zoom with a mother whose 13-month-old is not sleeping through the night anymore. Daddy just left for Iraq and baby's very attached to him. What can mommy do?
So that can, let's see. If there's upset around sleep, that is where I would go first, is the feelings, just because there's lots of things we can help them process, but the feelings tend to be up at the forefront. So if there's some upset before going to sleep, or if the child is waking up upset, holding space and letting the cry happen. I'm making a note. Hang on a sec. Okay, play 13 months. You can adjust this as needed for age, but you can do some of the symbolic play I've talked about with birth story with any situation. So a parent leaving. Yeah, mom and dad, we were all here together, and then with the dolls or the measuring spoons, he left and we've been really sad. He left for a while. And then also to see if it's connected with birth. Was there anything in the child's early experience, separation from either mom or dad, that might also be a layer in the way the child is processing or the feelings? Because sometimes, funny enough, life will bring us situations that reflect our early stuff that we still haven't healed or processed yet. So to also look at the layers there. That's helpful.
Yes, thank you. Ilya's asking about, when she tells a little story. She says, when I was pregnant with my first daughter, which was 20 years ago, I read all the books of Dr. Althea Salter, and I resonated with her approach to crying. However, when I tried to put it in practice, the crying in arms approach, I was not prepared for how her crying would activate my own unresolved issues, and also how my family system, specifically my mother, was uneasy with and judgmental of this new approach. Are you familiar with these side effects, and how do you work with parents around this?
Great, thanks for bringing this up. Yeah, in theory, it's pretty basic. Hold your kiddo, your baby, and let them cry, and it's really great. In practice, yes, absolutely, it will bring up our own history. It will bring up if we were raised in a way that we weren't able or allowed to express our feelings or our thoughts, or whatever the emotional tone was, feelings were not allowed, communication, or even a loving, oh, don't cry, it's okay, don't cry. Even that will stop the flow of feelings. So again, not a should or shouldn't on the intentions or judgment on parents, but what it was from our experience or the baby's experience. Definitely our own baby's crying can bring that stuff up. So so that's something, if when I'm working with families, I work through that process first, because I often see feelings come up so fast. to make sure the family is comfortable with it. And I never push it. So if we get to a point they're not comfortable, then we don't push that. But for yourself, when you get to those points that come up, or when a family gets to that point and they become anxious or uncomfortable with the crying, it's any of the skills or tactics, to connect people back into their comfort. And then also what I do is talk with them about how they were raised and what memories do they have, or what sense comes up, or how have you seen grandma interacting with your baby. That will give you clues. And to know that when we hear our own babies crying, some of that will come up. So mentally, it can help to know that, okay, my baby crying in this moment is okay. And I'm saying this with the assumption that your baby is healthy. So if you suspect medical concern, always do that. But to kind of say, okay, my baby crying in this moment, my baby is okay. Some of this is me and my experience. And to find that support for yourself, whether it's when I'm working with the family or a therapist or journaling or your partner. Aletha's books, some of them have questions in the back of each chapter to kind of help look into your own past. But it does come up, and with birth story in particular, depending how sensitive it is for the mom and where they are with it, there are some different directions we can go with birth story. And Wendy talks about making it easier or more challenging in the play, and that also can go for the grown-ups. Like, we need to slow down for the baby, but we might also need to slow down for the mom or anyone who was in the room. That helps.
Yes, thank you so much. Luciella is asking, when you realize that I'm assuming a baby, is telling you their birth story, what do you do? How do you let them know that you recognize this is their birth story?
Lovely. So if you feel like you're recognizing it in movement, or what I do is I'll acknowledge, oh, that looks like when blah, blah, blah. Like maybe they'll show something about their arm or their leg, or the way that they play with your cord on your clothes or something. Oh, is that like when, whatever. If it's feelings coming up or something's triggering, like strapping them into a car seat, to acknowledge, oh, I hear you, I'm listening. That's kind of the overall general basic, I hear you, I'm listening, like just hold space. To take it farther than that, is this reminding you of when whatever, or oh, that's kind of like when, that might be like when you got stuck, was that scary? Yeah, or if it's a toddler and they're playing, like dropping things down the tunnel and just getting playful, oh, there it goes, it's stuck in the tunnel, what do we do? Should we rescue it or should we leave it? And then you try to get it out. And with toddlers, you can get silly also. So it depends where the child is, but you can be neutral, serious, or silly. I can't get it out, it's stuck, and get really silly. Sometimes the silliness relieves some tension, but if there's feelings, the feelings, I wouldn't divert to silly, the feelings need to come out. So I hope that gives you some ideas.
So much, so many wonderful ideas and gems that you've shared with us. Eliza, will you tell us more about how you work online and how you would like to connect with people?
Yes, you can find me at consciousbaby.com. And if you go to consciousbaby.com/birthgame, I have there a starter And you can always start with your babies by talking through the birth story, but this gives you a little bit more about playing a womb type of game with any age. And the version for newborns is a nest. Make sure your baby can breathe. So I work online with sleep, motor development, birth story. I work with those all together, but also separately if sometimes families just want one of those pieces. You can also find me on Facebook. I have a group that's free and open to anyone curious. It's Conscious Baby. Look for Conscious Baby, Eliza Parker. And I am on Instagram, Eliza Conscious Baby. Nope, Conscious Baby Eliza.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that free gift offer of the birth game. Brianna did post that link for the birth game in the chat. So you want to make sure you grab that and go on to Eliza's page to retrieve your free gift. Thank you, Eliza, so much for joining us today.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. It's lovely. This is my favorite topic to talk about, birth story.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your passion and your wisdom. Thank you all for joining us this Monday, and we hope that you'll come back again next Monday when we speak with our very own Ellen Scove, who will share prenatal and birth imprints and how they impact a baby from an expressive arts therapist perspective. Until then, we love you all and wish you a beautiful, wonderful week. Please feel free to unmute yourselves as you leave today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eliza.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
for a wonderful presentation. Thank you.